Turn off a horror movie in the West, and monsters stay inside the screen. In Southeast Asia, the nightmare begins once lights go out. Indonesia is an archipelago of 17,000 islands, housing hundreds of different ethnic groups. Across these modernizing cities and dense jungles, ancient animistic traditions run parallel to everyday life. In this region, ghost stories function as survival rules. Supernatural entities walk the same streets as the living, and violating their space leads to physical, often fatal consequences. In 2019, an anonymous Twitter thread titled KKN di Desa Penari, the Village of Dancers, terrified the internet. It followed 6 university students on a community project in East Java who carelessly broke the sacred rules of a remote village. The consequences of their mistake are rooted in local burial protocols. In many Indonesian communities, the deceased is wrapped in a white shroud called a coffin. Mourners bind this cloth tightly in 3 specific places: at the head, the neck, and feet before burial. Local tradition dictates that the soul lingers on earth for exactly 40 days. Once that window closes, the living must physically return to the grave and untie those 3 knots, so the soul can finally move on. Failing to follow these ordinary mourning steps creates a supernatural trap. The psychological weight comes from the very real possibility of human error during burial. This porous border allows spirits to bleed into modern urban life. The kuntilanak, for example, is the vengeful spirit of a woman who died violently during pregnancy or childbirth. In 2020, a vegetable seller in Depok fell severely ill after a late-night ride home. When coworkers checked the street's CCTV footage, they saw a woman in a white dress sitting perfectly still on the back of his moving motorbike. You often hear these entities before you see them. If you are walking alone and hear a baby crying in the distance, a kuntilanak is likely standing right next to you. These entities operate as active urban predators. They hitch rides on late-night motorbikes and occupy the corners of modern, bustling markets. The most feared outcome occurs at the grave on that 40th day. If the living forget to untie the knots on the coffin, the trapped, rotting corpse rises from the soil as a pocong. Because its hands and feet remain bound by the shroud, the pocong must jump to move. It relentlessly leaps through the dark toward the living, begging them to untie its knots and set it free. A person who suffered an agonizing, violent death returns as the rare pocong merah, the red pocong. This variant seeks murderous revenge against the living instead of peaceful release. The terror of the pocong is inescapable because even the monsters are governed by the same cultural and religious obligations as the living. The East Java University students inadvertently challenged Badarwuhi, a powerful, ancient dancer spirit that governs the village. 2 of the students died mysteriously following the encounter, proving the curse's lethality and propelling the story to become the highest-grossing film in Indonesian history. Indonesian horror serves as a strict warning system. Disrespecting the hidden boundaries of the spiritual world carries permanent physical penalties. Look at the shadows in the corner of your room. Can you be absolutely certain you haven't crossed a boundary you didn't know existed? Make sure you subscribe right now to keep your feet safe, because ultimately, those who choose to ignore these ancient stories are usually the ones whose knots are never untied.